Please welcome our panel, Alternate Reality, Creating a New Metaverse with Data, with Sudeep George from iMerit, Eldar Khaliullin from Magic Leap, Keith Fieldhouse from Kitware, and Georg Poler from Reactive Reality.
Hi, welcome to our panel on alternate reality. I'd like to introduce my distinguished guests. We have Keith Fieldhouse, Eldar Khaliullin, and Georg Poler. Keith, if you could just say a few words about yourself.
Sure. I'm Keith Fieldhouse. I'm the Director of Cyber Physical Systems at Kitware. I've got a background in the commercial software industry, and for the last 11 years or so, I've been working on putting state-of-the-art computer vision systems into the field and challenging them with the reality of reality.
Eldar?
Yes, thank you for having me, Sudeep. And I'm a principal engineer at Magic Leap, leading data team for perception. I have background in experimental physics, spectroscopy, and also semiconductor business. And recently at Magic Leap, I started this data initiative. I'm very excited about it.
My name is Georg. I have a background in computer vision. I did my PhD here at Graz University of Technology, focusing on essentially how to reduce the labeling effort for computer vision learning-based systems. Now I'm a team lead of machine learning team here at Reactive Reality, where we essentially building a system which lets the user virtually try on clothes on their mobile device and interactively play with those kind of virtual try-ons.
Sure. Thank you, Georg. Welcome, everyone. Eldar, I'll start off the first question with you. Given your experience, what are your thoughts on the role of data in helping to achieve the vision of alternate reality? And what are some of the obstacles that one may encounter as they work in the space?
Yeah, I think we're basically moving from 2D world with a cell phone, like where we use the touch screen, into this 3D world. And this kind of changes a lot of things. Like we change how we interact with the interface. It changes how we move through space, and we kind of have to learn quite a lot of new things. And so I think computer vision data is definitely going to play a crucial role in this, and we basically have to capture a lot of these behaviors and also like how we use hands, for instance, and kind of translate it into applications that we build. So I think, basically key enabler is going to be the computer vision data for this kind of new generation of communication.
Thank you. Keith?
Yeah, I think what Eldar said is correct. One thing I'd add is that increasingly, as we're trying to deal with reality, we need to be sure that we're capturing the inherent messiness and unexpectedness of the reality that we're operating in.
Georg?
Yeah, I totally agree with what Keith and Eldar said. I just add regarding the obstacles we are facing to get there. What we find is a major obstacle, and probably for many other companies it's the same thing, is that the availability of data, especially when you're tackling a new problem. So at the beginning, you're kind of facing the problem that you have little to kind of no data, even in some cases. So it's really hard to get going in that sense. After a while, like if you, as soon as you have your models in production and or in the testing phase, you're in the situation where you often kind of continuously get new data arriving, which brings you in a much better situation than, of course, in the beginning, where you kind of have to invest a long time or quite some effort to be able to generate data, maybe manually generate data. Like we were very successful with generating synthetic data for this get going. Later on, when you have continuously arriving new data, you're the kind of the human in the loop or manually annotated data becomes much more important. But for this first kind of get going, the major obstacle I would say when you're talking about this is the availability of the data, and using like one if you like if I got it right, one question was how to make this a success for AR, right? So and with this in mind, I would say, like, as soon as we have this available, like as soon as we have it, as soon as we get going, we are able to bring in kind of the semantics into the 3D world Eldar was mentioning, which is, I think, the crucial for success of these kind of systems, for these kind of applications we are working on. It's not only the models, which are kind of dumb per se, but to bring in the semantics.
Sure. Thank you, Georg. Keith, given your experience in the ML space, what do you see as some of the biggest areas of improvement in ML data management?
Yeah, one of the challenges we face is that the sheer quantity of data that we need to do state-of-the-art computer vision is high and creates a whole set of challenges. One of the risks we have is that some of the players that are able to acquire that data, manage that data, store that data, deal with the regulatory requirements for owning and capturing that data, can really create an asymmetrical access to these latest technologies. And I think we need to think very carefully about making sure that not just muscle is what allows the advancements in computer vision, alternate reality, but agileness and cleverness and other ways of developing competitive advantages. Otherwise, we can have an impoverished sort of community doing the computer vision research.
Eldar?
Yeah, I think I kind of see that, especially in perception, we have most of the algorithms kind of advanced pretty far. So things like SLAM and hand tracking, and we kind of reap the first benefits. And maybe if I draw the analogy with semiconductor business, we kind of moving into the phase where the problems are becoming harder and harder, and it has to bring like more and more resources to an infrastructure to solve those harder problems. And so I see that there is a lot of opportunity to kind of like have more communication across the whole kind of solution space. So essentially starting from the generating data to architecture of the problem and solution all the way to the solution. And it kind of has like there should be more communication and kind of coherence between how we build model and how it relates to actually generating data itself. So I think that's kind of where we have a lot of challenge, and especially when it comes to accuracy, scalability of data, and quality, those are going to be much more important going forward as we kind of tackle harder and harder problems.
Georg, anything to add?
I think there's not a lot to add. Maybe just emphasizing what Keith and Eldar said in terms of it's not only the amount, the muscle power, as Keith formulated it, what counts, but really also our kind of brain power. We have to invest in the preparation, in the filtering, and in reducing biases and all these kind of things. Yeah.
Sure. So, Georg, given your work area, where do you see the biggest opportunities for AR? Is it in the consumer space? Is it in enterprise? And where are we on the adoption curve?
That's actually interesting because if I'm thinking of AR and VR applications, intuitively, what comes to my mind is like it's about a fun thing, and this kind of suggests that it might be very valuable in the consumer space, like for leisure activities, games, thinking of games like this. But actually, I would still think that it's much more. There's much more potential in the business to business case. For example, like if you're just looking at reactive reality, what we are doing, our product is actually kind of focused on the consumer in the end, because the consumer is having fun playing around, like seeing or virtually trying on clothes, for example. This is kind of the main focus, but still to make this kind of solution able, or to bring our solution to the customer, to the kind of end user, the important step is, or the potential we see is much higher via kind of retailers, via different business, which is based on the fact that they, of course, provide important assets like the products which the user can then try on in our case. But I think that's similar for different fields, actually.
Okay. Eldar, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, the AR space is very new, and I think it's very hard to solve kind of consumer scale problem, especially for small players. It's a pretty budget. Like most of the kind of low-hanging fruits have been captured by larger kind of players, and the kind of barrier for entry is pretty high for solving like other consumer problems easily. So I think like I agree with Jörg, like B2B is where I see most of the kind of ways for us to prove ourselves. And I think there are problems that we can formulate. They have attached value to it, and it's kind of, if you rank them by value and something that can be really a good fit with this technology, that's where I think biggest opportunities.
Keith?
The one thing I would add is, as I agree, the B2B area is where much of the money and attention will lie. But we've seen in the past that it'll be the consumer space that drives the discourse, drives the environment, drives the context, the regulatory climate, et cetera, in which the B2B and consumer space will operate. It just, that's what will get the attention. That's what will drive the conversation.
Sure. Keith, moving on to a bit more serious topic. AI has traditionally suffered from a problem of bias.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with the advancements in this field, do you think that we are on the right path to solving some of these problems?
I do, in the sense that bias and sort of legal and ethical issues, regulatory issues, and so on are sort of at the top of the conversation now. They're getting attention. We know all too well that that's not sufficient to drive action, but I'm encouraged that it's part of the conversation relatively early in the adoption of these technologies and the early development of these significant leaps in capability. We learned a little bit of a lesson as the internet came into our lives and had an effect. And I think some of those lessons, at least, are being applied here as these new technologies begin to take effect in our lives.
Eldar?
Yeah, I think I kind of see it as two issues. Like if it comes to data, if we have bias in the data, it's just bad data. It's unrepresentative of the world that we're trying to capture, right? On the other hand, I think like the problem is that if data captures bias in the world that we're in, That's where it's a bigger problem. And then if we train algorithms that amplify those biases, right, that becomes it even more pronounced. And so I think basically I agree with Keith. That's where kind of like regulation has to step in and basically kind of make sure that the application that like solutions that we build is kind of bridging those society conflicts and not so much amplifying them and taking people apart.
Thank you. Georg, just to extend this conversation, so synthetic data has been touted as one of the potential solutions for some of these problems. What are your thoughts, and how do you compare that against human annotated data?
So speaking from our perspective at Reactive Reality, we really had a good experience with synthetic data, as I briefly mentioned earlier already. So generating really high quality synthetic data made our lives pretty much easier. Actually was a key enabler for some of the tasks we were facing to get those solved. I mean, especially when I'm thinking of how to produce like 3D assets, 3D data from as few images as possible, maybe only a single view. You have a hard time to get manually labeled data, or it's at least a very high effort, which doesn't mean preparing a framework to generate the synthetic data for a specific task is of course also quite some effort, especially if you need to have it really realistic and accurate, which is usually the case, right? Especially for us, where visual quality is a key here. But of course, synthetic data is not the holy grail, right? In the end, considering, like, for example, if you're looking, just to give you an example, like if you use a parametric model, a body model of a model of a face to produce the synthetic data, what you end up with, like the limitations of the parametric model, is still like based on the data you learned the parametric model on, and that's still the real data. So you're still limited in the sense of variation, in the sense of controllability to some extent. I mean, you can control quite some factors, also tackling this bias issue you were just discussing. But still, there is some limitations. So it's not the only kind of the one solution, the one go-to solution. In the end, you always have to have a broader kind of range of tools, and also have human in the loop, use real data, unlabeled data, at least for the challenges we are facing here.
Sure. Keep jumping onto the topic of usage. ML Ops is now getting robust. Continuous training is a new paradigm. There's having full ownership of the data pipeline, including an ability to splice and dice the data, give a competitive advantage.
I think there's no question that the ability to sort of collect large amounts of data, curate that data, label that data, manage it, store it, manipulate it, all of that provides an opportunity to get a competitive advantage and move forward. I do think, though, that we also need to look to other ways of achieving advantage, either by more cleverly using available data that exists already, or make more interesting use of more limited amounts of data, be able to use less data, and so on. All of those things together are the way to be advantaged competitively and to be robust against the challenges that are coming down the pike, because challenges are always coming down the pike.
Thanks, Keith.
Mm-hmm.
Eldar, jumping on to our last question. So, keeping your professional interests aside, what do you personally, as a consumer, want to see AR achieve?
Yeah, I think like I'm very excited about bringing the expert knowledge to the outside. That's kind of the most interesting.
Okay. Georg?
So in general, I would say tackling inequalities is something. If you ask me, like what I'm dreaming of is this is my answer I would give here. This is of course rather generic, but there are on the one hand applications which are readily available where we kind of help are able, by using our technology, are able to help impaired people, for example, visually impaired, physically impaired. For example, like with reactive reality, of course, on the one hand, we are tackling this issue of kind of climate change by reducing the return rates, but also like we enabled a shopping experience, you could argue, for people which are kind of physically impaired and have a harder time to go to a physical shop. But in general, still to tackle inequalities in the world, I would say a much larger impact would be from kind of the direction which is often denoted by kind of democratizing AI, so making the data and the models available to a broader kind of public. But obviously, there are kind of big obstacles in this direction, like privacy concerns, security concerns, and so there's a long way to solve or to kind of go into this direction further.
Thanks, Georg. Keith, any final thoughts as we wrap up?
I just to extend a little bit what Georg said, the opportunity to use these tools and use these technologies to allow people to deal with the massive increase in the complexity of our lives. We've had a lesson in that in the last year. Having the opportunity to use those tools to enable people to better deal with these challenges and more justly deal with these challenges is sort of my ideal, my hope for what the work we're doing can accomplish.
Thank you, everyone. It's been a very interesting discussion. Thank you for all the insights that you've shared.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.